It was an ordinary evening when my friend Chloe and I decided to go for a walk. At 5 feet 1 inch, I might not seem very intimidating, and neither is Chloe, but we always enjoyed our late-night strolls. This evening, though, would be anything but ordinary. The clock read around 6:30 or 7 p.m. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, and the dark engulfed the streets surrounding my father's house. Despite the shadows, we felt safe. We always did on these walks. Laughter filled the air as we wandered down to our usual spot, a wide sidewalk area bordering a quiet road. As we made our way there, a mail truck crept by. I didn't think much of it, chalking it up to a late delivery. But Chloe noticed something off. Her unease was contagious, and we scrambled up some rocks to distance ourselves from the road. The truck passed us without incident, and, with a laugh, we brushed it off and continued our walk. When we reached the sidewalk area, we settled in, playing silly games and chatting. But then, the mail truck appeared again. It idled for a moment before turning around and driving past us. Then, it came back. Once. Twice. 4 times in total. Each pass felt more sinister, the driver's intentions unclear but undeniably alarming. The 4th time the truck stopped. Across the street, the driver got out and pretended to deliver mail to a house. My stomach twisted with unease. Chloe nudged me, her voice shaking as she pointed to another mail truck pulling up directly in front of us. 2 mail trucks. 2 drivers. We were surrounded. My heart pounded in my chest. The tension snapped as I shouted, "Okay, yeah, let's run." Without hesitation, we bolted. Adrenaline surged as we sprinted down the road, the first mail truck roaring to life and speeding after us. Chloe's longer strides put her slightly ahead, while I kept glancing back to gauge how close the truck was. Its headlights burned into my vision, closing the gap with alarming speed. We reached my dad's driveway, gasping for air but determined not to stop. The truck followed us, pulling into the driveway, far beyond the mailbox. It wasn't delivering mail. It was chasing us. "Dad! Mail!" I screamed as we burst into the house. My voice was strangled by fear and exhaustion. Chloe and I were crying, barely able to breathe, let alone explain. My dad jumped up, his protective instincts kicking in immediately. My brother grabbed his firearm without hesitation. They both ran outside while Chloe and I collapsed onto the floor, clutching each other as panic coursed through us. We called the police, our voices trembling as we described what had happened. The officers' questions were clinical and detached, focusing solely on the appearance of the drivers and their vehicles. But what haunted me most was their lack of urgency. Were mailmen known to do this? Had anyone else experienced something similar? The police didn't seem to know. That night, sleep evaded me. Every sound outside made me jump, every shadow seemed to hide sinister intentions. The mail trucks, once symbols of mundane routine, now represented something far darker. Questions swirled in my mind, questions I feared might never have answers. Was this an isolated incident? Or was something far more sinister at play? The experience left me scarred, my sense of safety shattered. I've never looked at a mail truck the same way since. And as I share this story, I hope to warn others, trust your instincts. Even in the most ordinary of settings, danger can lurk, ready to strike when you least expect it. The days after the incident were a blur of anxiety and paranoia. Chloe and I found ourselves constantly looking over our shoulders. Even the sound of a passing engine sent shivers down my spine. My father's attempts to reassure me fell flat. How could he promise safety when two men had boldly chased us in broad view? I'd expected the police to follow up quickly, to knock on the door with news of arrests or at least a lead. But their response was frustratingly slow. Days turned into weeks, and their calls became fewer and farther between. I began researching similar incidents, desperate for answers. What I found only deepened my unease. There were whispers online of similar encounters, strange vans, unmarked trucks, men pretending to be delivery workers. Most stories were dismissed as urban legends or paranoia. But I knew what Chloe and I had seen, what we had felt. This wasn't just a story. It was real. I started noticing more mail trucks in the neighborhood. They seemed to be everywhere, moving slowly down the streets, lingering longer than seemed necessary. Maybe it was my imagination, heightened by fear. Or maybe it wasn't. One evening, a familiar rumble stopped me in my tracks. Chloe and I were walking home from school when a mail truck turned the corner. My pulse quickened as I gripped her arm. "It's them," I whispered. The truck slowed as it passed us, the driver's face obscured by the glare of the windshield. I could feel his gaze, cold and calculating, as if he recognized us. We ran, just like before. The truck didn't follow this time, but the fear was enough to cement one thing: they were still watching. Determined to reclaim some sense of control, I convinced my father to install security cameras around the house. The grainy footage brought some peace of mind, though every notification from the system sent my heart racing. My brother's firearm now stayed close by, a constant reminder of how close we'd come to real danger. But life couldn't stop. Chloe and I still had to navigate school, errands, and the routine of daily life. Each time we stepped outside, we carried the weight of what happened. We avoided walking alone, taking different routes, and staying in well-lit areas. And yet, the fear remained, a constant companion in the back of my mind. Through it all, one question lingered: why us? What did they want? The lack of answers was suffocating. Every day felt like a game of waiting, wondering if they'd return, if the next time would end differently. I wasn't sure I'd ever feel safe again. And then, one night, the cameras caught something. It was late, long after everyone had gone to bed. The house was silent, save for the faint hum of the security system. Then, a motion alert buzzed on my phone. Groggy and half asleep, I opened the app to check the feed. A mail truck sat at the end of the driveway. The driver's silhouette was barely visible in the dim light, but it was unmistakably them. Panic gripped me as I woke my dad and brother, my voice shaking as I explained what I'd seen. They grabbed their weapons and headed outside, but by the time they reached the driveway, the truck was gone, leaving only tire marks as evidence. The police were called again, their response just as lackluster as before. "We'll keep an eye out," they said. But I knew better. If we wanted to stay safe, we'd have to rely on ourselves. And so we did, living each day with a heightened sense of awareness. The mail trucks still haunt my dreams, their presence a constant reminder of how quickly the mundane can turn menacing. To this day, I don't know what they wanted or why they targeted us. But one thing is certain: they underestimated us. We escaped once, and we'll be ready if they ever come back. Weeks later, Chloe stumbled upon something that reignited our fear and curiosity. While scrolling through a local community forum, she found a post describing a similar encounter. Another girl in a nearby town had been followed by a mail truck late at night. Her story mirrored ours in unsettling detail: the circling, the sudden stop, and the attempt to approach her. We reached out to her immediately, and what she told us sent chills down my spine. She'd noticed a sticker on the back of the truck, something we hadn't paid attention to in our panic. It was a small, faded emblem of an unfamiliar company. This wasn't a standard postal service vehicle. Armed with this new detail, we dove deeper into our investigation. The emblem led us to a defunct delivery company that had gone bankrupt years ago. Its remaining fleet had been auctioned off to private buyers. The realization hit us hard: these weren't mailmen. They were imposters. The knowledge brought no comfort. If anything, it deepened the mystery. Who were these men, and why were they using these trucks to stalk unsuspecting victims? The lack of answers gnawed at me, driving me to stay vigilant, to question every vehicle that crossed my path. Even now, the events of that night remain unresolved. The mail trucks have vanished, leaving only the memory of their menace. But the fear they instilled lingers, a shadow over my once innocent strolls. Chloe and I continue to piece together the puzzle, hoping for closure, but fearing what we might uncover. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that safety is fragile. And sometimes, the most harmless seeming things, a friendly wave, a familiar truck, can hide the darkest intentions. So if you see something that feels off, trust your instincts. Because you never know what might be lurking just around the corner.